Again, I forgot to turn my microphone on. Apologies. Good evening, everybody. I am back after a week of rest, a week of recuperation. Let me change my lighting here. God, look, all it takes is a couple of days of not live streaming and I forget how to do it. It's been a week in the history books, I think. Last weekend, for those of you who don't know, we gathered outside the Church of Scientology's UK headquarters, St Hill in East Grinstead, in protest outside the annual gathering of the International Association of Scientologists. This is Scientology's official membership body. They have an annual gathering every year at their UK headquarters. People travel from all over Europe to attend this thing, and we stood outside the gates of St. Hill with a message of empathy, of compassion, and of sympathy, and of saying we are here not to disagree with your religious beliefs or so-called religious beliefs, but we are here to offer a message of compassion and of help, and to say, if you decide to leave, we are here to help you, and we just want the abuse to stop within the organization that is the Church of Scientology. And what a week it has been. This is the third year we have gathered outside the gates of St. Hill with this same messaging. And of course, as many of you know, weeks and weeks go into the planning of this protest. There has been no evidence of any antisocial or harassment sort of behaviour. It is a peaceful protest. We do so in accordance with UK law. We engage in meaningful dialogue with Sussex Police and with the local authorities to ensure that our protest goes ahead with minimal disruption from the get-go. That doesn't stop Scientology, however, from trying to claim that all of the problems that this event causes are a problem resulting from protesters gathering outside. Now, this whole process was very clearly exposed by the Public Spaces Protection Order that Scientology tried to apply for last year. Again, very briefly, I know many of you watch most of my videos, but for those of you who are new, last year, after this protest outside this event, Scientology tried to get protesting banned outside their UK headquarters. They applied to Mid Sussex District Council for a PSPO, which essentially would make protesting illegal outside their headquarters. And as a result of their application, there was an extensive investigation and consultation period and observation exercise by the council. They sent observers last year to monitor our activities. The whole thing cost £84,000 of taxpayer money. So if you are a Sussex resident, you have paid for this observation exercise, which resulted in the council assessing our behaviour as non-controversial, as completely legal, as peaceful, and the council duly noted that the problems Scientology were complaining about are a result of their event and not of protesters. For example, the build-up of traffic and poor traffic management. This is a result of the thousands of vehicles that travelled to St Hill for people attending this event to hear reclusive leader David Miscavige speak, and it is not a result of protesters standing on the side of the road. In fact, as a result of this PSPO process, the council came to the conclusion that in order to minimise disruption, Scientology should perhaps think about implementing some minor changes to their event strategy. For example, punching a new hole into their property so that attendees can cross the road from the rugby club and walk on the Scientology property away from the highway and not encounter protesters. It actually suggested that lesser measures are required to minimize disruption, and in fact, the majority of the blame falls on Scientology and not as protesters. Now, that doesn't stop Scientology trying to claim that we were the source of the disruption. And of course, we just showed up with smiles on our faces, with peaceful protest signs saying, we're not against you, we're against the abuse within your organization. And any reasonable person would look at these messages and think, maybe our actions are causing a bit of a PR disaster here. Now, if you look at other churches and religious organizations, let's take the Catholic Church, for example. We're not going to turn this into a debate about the Catholic Church. I'm just using it as an example. The Catholic Church recently put out a statement that said something to the effect of, we recognize in the past we made statements and had policies that resulted in the LGBTQ plus community being shunned, being looked negatively upon, and we use our faith as an excuse to further enable abuse and make people feel uncomfortable about their sexual identity. They released a statement that apologized for this behavior and said, look, we've looked at what we've done and we apologize. We got it wrong. There's still work to be done, but we are endeavoring to make change here so that our religious group is open for all to join. And the message of God is one of love and compassion. And we want that to convey across in our actions. And we want to try better to include everybody in our religious group. The Church of Scientology, it seems to be incapable of making such a statement. Any PR or marketing professional, as I am one, would probably advise the Church of Scientology the best course of action might be to look at these allegations of abuse, the stories of former survivors and former members who are speaking out, claiming things like forced familial disconnection, forced abortions, hard manual labor, and all of these things. Any reasonable PR or marketing advisor would say to the church, actually, the best thing you could do right now is to A, acknowledge these claims, B, accept that they are the experience of many people. And even if you don't want to admit fault or guilt, you could at least say, we recognize these are things that people say, and we apologize if we got it wrong. And we are looking at things and trying to change to make it better. That would be the easiest cop-out Scientology could do. It wouldn't be admitting fault. It wouldn't be admitting that they are following policy and it's a systemic issue of abuse. It wouldn't be them saying we've done this to change things. It would be a blanket statement that says, we recognize we got things wrong and we're going to try and do better in the future. That doesn't fix or resolve or absolve all of these issues that people claim the Church of Scientology creates. But at least it would create a starting block, a foundation for the church to perhaps look at things differently and regain a little bit of trust in the public. And maybe people would look a little bit more favorably upon the Church of Scientology and go, look, I've heard all of these stories of abuse and so on, but it appears they're trying to do something about it, trying to change things. They're aware of it, and only time will tell whether they actually make any changes or not. But I would advise, as a PR and marketing person, that would be a good first step to say, clearly, we've done something wrong or something has happened here which doesn't sound like what Scientology is meant to be, and we will do something about it. You don't even have to commit to anything other than acknowledging it. But the Church of Scientology refuse to acknowledge that they are at fault with anything, ever at all. Because in Scientology, you have to follow the policy as written by L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s. You cannot deviate from that. And even in instances where it makes them look bad, they have to do what Hubbard said. And let's not forget that Hubbard didn't foresee the creation of the internet. He didn't realize that 20 years after his death, or 30 years after his death, there would be this World Wide Web thing where people can connect and talk about their stories. And I think if he was alive, he probably would have come up with some solution of how to deal with press and accusations and stories of abuse and so on in a different way that maybe would have made Scientology look a little bit more favorably among the public. But That's not something they can do. They're not capable of doing it because they have to follow the policy which was written in 1950, even though it makes them look bad. So today, we're going to talk about what a monumental week this has been since the protest last weekend. I'm going to share some press stories that have gone out in the media over the week, and we're going to talk about how this has been a monumental foot bullet for the Church of Scientology and demonstrate just how they are the creators of their own downfalls. I last weekend did a live stream after the protest, which takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resource, takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot out of me, let's be honest. So after the protest, I said, I'm going to take some time out. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to reset, think about things, and I'll come back to YouTube when I'm ready. Now, if I'm honest, in a perfect world, that break probably would have been a month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months. Unfortunately, it's not been possible to take the break that I wanted to take because Scientology continues in their prolific, sustained campaign of targeted harassment and attempts to silence us critics and former members, and they are relentless in their attacks. And of course, I have done what I can to raise awareness of this issue widely. And of course, we've had a lot of press this week, which I didn't expect. I thought this year we'd have a protest, we might get a few news articles, and I could take a bit of time off. But this week has been inundated with back and forth with the council, with highways, with the press, trying to get wider exposure of this issue. And I wanted to jump on here just to share a bit of news about what's been going on this week. But before we do, let's say hello to some of the people in the chat. We have Love It here saying hello, thank you for joining. We have DS here saying thank you for the membership, thank you and welcome aboard. We have Anon Lethal here. Hi all, hope everyone's having a good evening and night. Thank you for jumping in and being a great moderator. We have Laura FM in the house, dropping the hearts and the rock emojis. Thank you for joining. For those of you who don't know, Lara FM is an ex-Scientologist doing wonderful work over in Los Angeles. She is a channel definitely to go and watch if you haven't already subscribed. Linda here saying, Apostate Alex, every protest should be in costume and have bagpipes. Oh, what a highlight it was last week to have a real bagpiper and to be there in costumes. And this, I believe, I wouldn't say once in a lifetime, but it is once in a blue moon opportunity that the IES event falls on Halloween, which isn't very often. It's something we want to take advantage of. And of course, if we have an excuse to dress up in costume, we will. And we took it and I loved it. Thank you so much. Eerie Forever saying hello all. Thank you. Bok Buddy here in the chat saying, Alex, you're doing a wonderful job documenting the shrinking numbers of Scientology. You are becoming Applebox Boy's #1 nemesis. You're embarrassing him in front of his whales. Well, we're going to get onto that. And I will absolutely say that it is very clear. David Miscavige, the current leader of the Church of Scientology, clearly spends more time thinking about me than I do of him. And I'm not sure if that's a compliment, flattery, or concerning. But either way, they've been full on in their attacks this week. And all I've done is turned it back on them. Because if they were to stop abusing me, if they were to stop harassing the protesters, if they were to stop issuing articles on Freedom Magazine, on Stand League, and statements to the press, perhaps we would have less to talk about. So Scientology, it's all your own doing. And I welcome the day that you cease and desist, to use your words, harassing and intimidating us as protesters. Because the moment you start doing that is the moment we have nothing to protest about. So bring it on, Scientology. Please do stop harassing and abusing us, and maybe we'll stop protesting because we won't have anything to protest about. Love It here saying, hey, chat buds, we have full of questions. Barbara saying, good evening, Alex and fellow SPs. Haggis Basher here saying, the town has to stop giving them so much leniency when they break every law and just throw money at it. Yes, we are going to get into the town issues. I'm going to save that question and bring it up again later. Christy here saying, if your religion is headed by someone who can be described as a reclusive leader, you might just be in a cult. Yeah, precisely. Reclusive leader, David Miscavige. He's very rarely seen in public. Mrs. T saying, God bless you, Alex, and everyone working to take Scientology down. The My Wicked Tribe saying, I'm 6 minutes behind, tell us everything. Welcome aboard. I hope you're watching this on 1.25 or 1.5 speed so you can catch up. We have full of questions, Barbara. Hi, Janet. I hope you're still in good standing after all the big flaps over the big event. We do love Janet. Love it saying, comment, you'd think at some point they'd realise the world has changed and maybe policies haven't kept up. Yeah, honestly, Scientology prides itself in being an organisation that is logical, that makes sense, that supersedes societal issues. I remember, for example, this is a prime example, the communication cycle, right? Scientology teaches that they have the solution to communication. And when I was a teenager and I went in, I said, look, I don't have any problem communicating with anybody. I will strike up a conversation with anyone. I don't have a problem talking to anyone. They go, no. The thing is with communication is it's something we all do, but you're never taught how to actually communicate. And I was like, well, yeah, why would I need to be taught how to communicate? I just learn it. And they said, well, yeah, this is the problem. Is you learn how to communicate based on your own intuitions, on observing other people. You're never actually taught how communication works and therefore how to be an effective communicator. So by doing this course, STCC, Success Through Communication course, we actually break it down to the building blocks of what communication is and then help you understand how it actually works. So therefore you can be more effective in your communication with others. That sounds wonderful. Fantastic. Sign me up. Let's do it. But actually, what it results in is you learning how to communicate in a way that Scientology wants you to communicate that isn't necessarily applicable to the world. Now, let's get on to the topic of today's stream. Little bit of a recap. I did a recap earlier this week about the protest, but I wanted to bring you first and foremost photos from this year's protest. This is iesprotest.com. This is the protest website. For those of you who want to join us in protest, I would suggest keeping an eye on this website because this is where we announce information about the protest, about the dates and information, and after the event, I upload photos from this year's protest. It's very clear. We're united against Scientology abuse. In October 2025, we met outside St. Hill to send Scientology a clear message: the abuse must stop. And we now have photos from this year's protest. You can see here, we have a wonderful bagpiper as funded by you as a community. Thank you so much for that. Marching through East Grinstead, we have the lovely Danielle Chamberlain with her sign that said, give Janice's furniture back. Now, for those of you who are thinking, what on earth is that about? Janice Gillum Grady, who's on the channel Scientology Peeling the Onion, our Scientology stories. She does this channel with Mark Fisher. Again, fully recommend subscribing. She was brought up in Scientology and at one point lived at St. Hill, Scientology's UK headquarters. And when she was then stationed at another org over in the US, she was transferred to work in a different Scientology building. And all of her family's furniture, having lived at Scientology's property, was left at St. Hill because they weren't allowed to move with it. And to our understanding, it is still there to this day at St. Hill Manor. So even though Janice left Scientology many years ago, they are still hanging on to her furniture. So this sign is saying, give her furniture back. We've got some great pictures of our police escort down the road, of our signage, of people gathering on the road saying things like, pay the staff minimum wage. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask of people. There are some great photos. So the recap is live on the website. We talk a little bit here about what we did and the press coverage we got in the last live stream I did. I talked about the Mirror, the Sun, and the Argus, 3 papers that covered our protest. We talked about the disruptions to the local community. Here's a picture of the tent that was erected illegally, and so on. So that's the protest website. I would suggest taking a look at it if you haven't already. But The main thing I wanted to talk about is what a foot bullet this whole thing has been. This event last weekend took place in a 45,000 square foot marquee erected on Scientology's property near East Grinstead without planning permission. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that this huge tent was erected without permission. In the UK, you're allowed to put up a temporary structure on your land without requiring permits or permission to do so if it's temporary in its nature. For example, it's the summer, the days are long, the sun sets at 9 or 10 in the evening, and you want to have a couple of friends over for a barbecue. So you put up a small marquee in your back garden so that you can have your barbecue, and just in the off chance it rains, or perhaps it's too hot and you want a little bit of shade, you have somewhere you can go to. And after the event, you take the tent down and then your garden returns to normal. That is permitted. You don't need to request planning permission for such a thing. In UK law, actually, it's 100 meters squared is the limit. If the structure you're erecting is larger than 100 meters squared, no matter how long it's there for, you need to request permission. If it's smaller than that, you can put it up without requesting permission, and it can be in situ for 28 days. If it is larger than 100 square meters, or if it's smaller and it's there for more than a month, you need to submit an application for planning permission. Scientology's 45,000 square foot marquee, which is over 1,000 meters squared, far exceeds those limits. It is also in situ for a period of 3 or 4 months. Now, this is not an allegation that I'm making. This is not something I'm suggesting may or may not be the case. We know it as a fact. We have pictures from when the tent started to be constructed and pictures from when it was taken down. Scientology itself did submit an application for planning permission, and in that application, they included statements that this tent takes a month or two to build, and then it's there for a month, and then it takes 3 months or 2 months to take down. This planning application they submitted was not for permission for the tent, it was for a car park and a few other adjustments to their property. But in those documents, they admitted that this is a large structure that is in place for more than 28 days. So, this thing happens in an illegal structure that Mid Sussex District Council issued a planning contravention notice for last year. It is unclear to me why the council are dragging their feet and have not slapped Scientology with a lawsuit or with a fine, or just simply rocked up on the property with the bulldozers. However, the council are very aware that this building has been constructed without permission, and they are currently considering enforcement action. In addition to that, Scientology placed hoarding, they erected a fence and new hedging opposite their entrance on St. Hill Road. They did have a license to implement certain things. For example, they had a license to plant 35 plants. They wanted to create a holly bush on the road opposite the entrance to their property. It is highways land, public land, not theirs. And they originally planted a big bush and erected a fence. And they admitted to the council that they did this to stop protesters gathering outside. Highways told them this is an illegal obstruction to the public right of way and told them you need to remove the hedge and the fence, and if you don't, we will remove it and send you the bill. After months of deliberation, Scientology finally removed the hedge and the fence. And just weeks before the protests this year, they applied for a planting license. They said to West Sussex Highways, hey, look, we apologise for getting it wrong. We would like to plant a new hedge to make the whole area look nicer, and it's on Highways land, but we'll look after it. We'll pay for upkeep and so on. Highways said, okay, fine. Why not? If you have applied for a planting license, we'll give you a license, and as a part of that, there will be conditions. If you do not meet those conditions, we will revoke the license, and therefore there will be no room for manoeuvre, and you won't be allowed to put any obstructions there again in the future. So the license made it clear you could plant 35 individual plants to make one hedgerow and it has to be a certain distance from the highway, no fencing, no obstructions, but go for it. Scientology subsequently planted 105 individual plants, immediately breaching the conditions of their planting license. Similarly, they had a hoarding license. They got approval to put fencing along the side of the road in order to create a separation between the traffic, the road users, and pedestrians. On the condition there is a rite of passage and they don't put any obstructions to block people from walking along the verge. Scientology put planters and other obstructions all around their entrance, which meant any reasonable, normal person who was walking along this verge behind the hoarding would not be able to cross the road over the entrance to their property, because the planters make you walk into their property before you can cross the road and walk out again. So it is an obstruction of the public right of way. And West Sussex Highways told them, you need to remove these planters. They are not allowed through the conditions of the hoarding license, and they are illegal obstructions of the public right of way. Scientology refused to remove those planters, and so we are now in a situation where, as a matter of fact, not debate, Scientology were in breach of the conditions of the planting license, Scientology were in breach of the conditions of the hoarding license, and they have erected this massive tent illegally without permission. Those are all matter of fact things that have happened. There is no debate about that. All you have to do is ask the council for the information and they will confirm those as matter of fact. In fact, I have published several emails that I've had back and forth with the council authorities on my blog, Scientology Business, about this matter. Nonetheless, that hasn't stopped Scientology from trying to claim that they haven't done anything wrong whatsoever. And the beauty of this situation is that it's not just me complaining. The people of East Grinstead, the town in which Scientology's UK headquarters is located, have simply had enough of the disruption that this event causes to the local community. For example, the planters. Because they created an unlawful obstruction on the public highway, it meant that pedestrians, local residents, dog walkers had nowhere to stand. They had to walk in the road if they happened to be walking up the road with their dogs, for example. And because of this, West Sussex Highways had to implement an emergency temporary traffic regulation order, a TTRO, which for the duration of the weekend reduced the speed limit of the road from 60 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. And the reason they gave for this is for the protection of pedestrians in light of Scientology's failure to comply with the conditions of their hoarding license. Local residents are very upset and angry about this, and of course, they have done everything they can to try and raise awareness of this. And the beauty of what we've had over the last week with the press and so on is that it's not just focusing on the protest, it's not just focusing on me, it is focusing on the fact that people in the town have simply had enough. Now, the first article I'm going to show is from the Daily Mail, and one thing to consider, the Daily Mail is a tabloid. They love the celebrity gossip. So the headline may be about Tom Cruise, but if you read the actual article, it gets very interesting. And it offers an insight into how people really feel about Scientology in their town. Let's also not forget that the Daily Mail is the most read newspaper platform on planet Earth. So one article in the Daily Mail gets thousands, if not millions, of views. And my goal is to raise awareness about the fact that Scientology are not complying with the rules, with the law. They're causing disruption with this event, and it's not because of the protesters, it's because of their own event. So the beauty of this article being in the Daily Mail is thousands, if not millions of eyes have got on it. And now people are starting to realize it's a problem that they are creating. So the headline is, Mission Possible, Tom Cruise defies demo to chop it into UK's Scientology fundraiser. This is the moment Tom Cruise defies demonstrators to chopper into Scientology's UK headquarters for their controversial church's annual fundraiser. The Hollywood star 63 was helicoptered into St Hill Manor, the church's British base in East Grinstead, Sussex, to take part in a 3-day event amid protests over the sect's contentious practices. The Mission Impossible star, dressed in a blue button shirt and a navy suit, was staring at his phone after stepping out of the chopper as he steers clear of angry locals. In exclusive pictures obtained by the Daily Mail, Cruise was spotted wearing an aviation headset as he lands. He avoided crowds of protesters who were taking part in a demonstration against the event, which drew 7,000 Scientologists from across the globe, as it was held for a third consecutive year. Now, I take issue with that 7,000 claim. There is no way 7,000 people showed up to this event, but that's what Scientology said. It was more like 1,000, maybe 2,000. Anyway, in a bid to disrupt the protesters, the church played loud bagpipe music on a large speaker. One resident, wishing to remain anonymous, described the event as very disruptive. He said, for 6 to 8 weeks, they were laying down pallets in the field to make a car park, so we had the disruption and noise of that, with a lorry after lorry coming. Here are the pictures of Tom Cruise in his helicopter. If you haven't already seen the live stream on Sunday, I'd go back and watch it. We did indeed catch Tom Cruise. Then they made all the neighbours listen to bagpipe music on loop all day. In the evening, they had 2 generators to power floodlights in the car park, and we could hear the generator no more than 60 yards from our back door. One didn't go off until 1 a.m, and the second generator stayed on all night, so all night an empty car park was lit up. I'm tolerant, I don't have religion, but I don't object to others having it. Scientology say they've cleaned up their act, but they still have the same boss, and I really don't believe they've changed their spots. Another resident said it's an endless stream of people and so much noise. The infrastructure isn't built for it, so it ends up being chaos. Then you've got Tom flying in on his chopper, and it causes a right old racket. To top things off, a minibus ended up having an accident with another driver, which meant one of the roads ended up being closed. Here's a picture of our protest marching through East Grinstead. The church made a request for a PSPO in 2024, as I explained earlier. A spokesperson for the church said the Church of Scientology's annual celebration drew over 7,000 attendees. The weekend featured traditional bagpipe performances, community festivities, and a gala charity concert supporting local causes. The event was a resounding success, generating significant cultural and economic benefits for the area and warmly welcomed by residents. Well, that's not what residents are telling me, and that's not what residents are telling the Daily Mail. This is very clearly not something that was welcomed by the local community. Cruz has been a member of the church, blah, blah, blah. Let's skip through this little bit. It talks about Tom Cruise's, recent relationship with Ana de Armas. Scientology was set up in the 1950s. It's been criticised by former members who allege mistreatment and claim it preys on vulnerable people. They've also described how members are pressured to cut ties with family and friends if they criticise it. Alex Barnes-Ross, that's me, guys. Former member and employee of the church. And I'm glad they used that word, employee, because that is exactly what I was. I was an employee that got paid less than £20 a week on most weeks. Organised this weekend's protest. He told the Daily Mail, despite Scientology's best efforts to disrupt our protest plans, we showed up this weekend with smiles on our faces and with empathy and compassion at the forefront of our activism. Scientology claims we are all anti-religious bigots engaging in a campaign of hate speech, but our signs said things like, when was the last time you saw your family? They love you and so do we. And we come back and we still care about you. He previously told the Daily Mail how aspiring leaders were put under pressure to work 18-hour days across 7-day weeks and put on menial hard labour such as hauling large boxes or scrubbing walls with a tiny sponge, while rationed sparse meals of rice and beans if they were deemed to be underperforming. The movement has previously rejected such allegations. Statement: the Church of Scientology said, since 1997, we have been holding annual charity concerts as part of the anniversary celebration of the IAS, supporting more than 50 local charities. They've included local hospitals, emergency and care services, community centres, youth groups, sports clubs, and many more. Over the past 10 years alone, we have raised more than £2 million for local causes, ensuring vital support reaches those who need it most. Now, I think what's particularly most interesting about this is they didn't deny any of the claims of abuse. They didn't deny the disruption that the event caused, and they simply said, we've donated money to local causes. Over 10 years, they've given £2 million, allegedly, to local causes. One IAS event generates in excess of 10, maybe £20 million in donations for this large organisation. Many people who have worked this event attest to the fact that this event costs £1 million to put on and generates tens of millions back. The fact that they offer a tokenistic £50,000 donation to a local sports club is nothing but a tactic to smear information around East Grinstead and try and blurry the picture to make it look like they're helping the community. If they genuinely cared about the local community, they would donate more than 50 grand when over the weekend they are making millions and millions of dollars. But nonetheless, I think it is a great example of the press calling Scientology out for their disruption and making it clear that they are the ones at fault here. Let's have a look at some of these comments before we move to the next one. Mrs. T, unfortunately, Scientology have the town council and the mayor in their pockets. I'm so sick of corrupt leaders allowing atrocities to go on for a bit of money. Absolutely. And that's something we hope to address over the next few months. Bok Buddy here saying holly bushes are a good analogy of Scientology. Looks good, but loaded with hidden thorns that do harm when you get close. Shazam here saying OT use OT7 tech and ask Anna Paddock OC Opera. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. I don't understand who that Anna person is, but maybe I need to learn more. Please send me an email. Linda P. Golan here saying, you just know he had to come in Friday to lead the standing ovations for the 3-hour BS Clearing the Earth speech. Full of questions. Barbara says, I wonder if the council and mayor are more afraid of Scientology, of what Scientology would do to them if they refused. Bad press is not good press for political figures. Absolutely. And Bok Buddy here saying, bagpipes on loop sounds tough. Better than an LRH lecture on loop, though. Absolutely. 100%. I agree. All right, let's carry on. So, already, right, we've had the Sun, we've had the Mirror, we've had She Knows. The Sun, the Mirror, and Sussex Express, I think it was. And the Argus. 3 big papers talking about the disruption this event caused. Now, add to the equation the Daily Mail, the most read news platform on the planet, talking about this story. So already, yesterday was clearly a bad day to be in the Office of Special Affairs. And then, this article drops in The Guardian. The Guardian is another major newspaper in the United Kingdom. It seemed like quite a do. White East Grinstead hosts one of Scientology's glitziest evenings. Last week, 7,000 people, including Tom Cruise, descended on West Sussex Town for an event that divides a local opinion. In the nearly 30 years that Diane has lived in East Grinstead, not many days live as long in the memory as the day she saw Tom Cruise on the high street. I saw him a couple of years ago walking past Iceland. For those of you abroad, Iceland is a local shop. It's like a supermarket, grocery store. East Grinstead is home to the Church of Scientology. Its St. Hill Manor is the UK headquarters for the organisation. Last week, the church held its annual fundraising bash, the Patrons Ball, with people gathering from all over the world. They were greeted with a night of glitz and glamour, according to videos taken on the night, including live performances, flowing wine, and a flashy stage setup that could have been lifted straight from a primetime Saturday night entertainment show. Now, we are going to pause our programming very briefly here to give you a taste of the sort of harassment I've been receiving in the last week since this article and everything else went out. The article says the event included flowing wine. Bear that in mind. Flowing wine. Okay, so apparently there's flowing wine happening at this event. Now, as many of you know, Over the last year, I've been the subject of a targeted and sustained campaign of harassment from the Church of Scientology, orchestrated by their Office of Special Affairs, predominantly online. This has involved over 10,000 attack tweets directed at me, trying to smear my name, trying to intimidate me into silence. And normally, I don't pay attention to any of them because, who cares what Scientology thinks? I'm just here trying to raise awareness of what they're doing, their behaviors and abusive practices. But this particular comment caught my eye because I shared this article on Twitter, formerly known, X, formerly known as Twitter. And here is the post. And I said, today's Guardian, covering the disruption caused by Scientology's event, with a picture of the article itself. And one of Scientology's many OSA trolls, one of the thousands of accounts that attack me every single day with tweets, replied with this comment. The article says flowing wine. It's as batshit crazy as you are. There's never alcohol served at Scientology events. Now, firstly, nobody said that the wine that was flowing was alcoholic. It could have been non-alcoholic wine. All it said was wine was flowing. But nonetheless, this person is very clearly saying, I'm batshit crazy because the article claims wine was flowing and there's no wine at the IES event. So, of course, I couldn't resist this particular comment and I had to respond. This was my response. Lol, what's that on the table then? Here's a picture from the 2025 IES event. You can see it's IES because this is their fancy dinner dessert on the patrons' ball. Here is a glass of wine, and here is the background where you can see this is very clearly the tent inside the International Association of Scientologists event. And the next picture here is another picture of that table where you can very clearly see 2 wine bottles. So, for this person to say there was no wine flowing is nothing but an outright lie. Here are pictures from the event that shows wine was flowing. And of course, Scientology got their knickers in a twist and responded, well, there's non-alcoholic wine, or nobody said it was real wine. It could have been AI. You may have just generated those pictures online. And that's when I back out because I don't care. I'm not going to get involved in a debate with some troll online. But this is the length, the extent Scientology go to try and harass and intimidate us as critics and former members. And just an example of how I love calling out Scientology for their outright lies. And the more time goes on, the more outrageous their lies become. Let's carry on. According to the church, more than 7,000 people descended on the mansion. Not all of those were A-listers. The organisation said residents and town and district councillors were also on the guest list. A gathering of such size in a town with a population of just 26,000 is unlikely to go unnoticed. One report in the Sun newspaper said Cruz's helicopter caused a right old racket. Paul and Vanessa were walking their dogs past the manor when they noticed a lot of traffic outside. It seemed like quite a do. We went for a walk and they were setting up. We could hear them testing for the band. They spent a few quid. Their car park was massive. East Grinstead, which has been called the UK's Twin Peaks, has a complicated relationship with the organisation. Here's another person here talking about her not being a fan of Scientology's presence. And then it talks here about the controversies it's faced in the UK. L. Ron Hubbard was banned from entering the United Kingdom by the British government in 1968. Kenneth Robinson, the health minister at the time, called Scientology a potential menace to the personality and well-being of those so deluded to become its followers. The organisation's current leader, David Miscavige, has been served with lawsuits in the US. It talks about Narconon here and how Narconon was given a reprimand by the Charity Commission after an extensive investigation by the Observer newspaper last year, which I was heavily involved in. The controversies have had an impact locally. Critics have regularly protested outside the organisation, and this year a sign erected opposite East Grinstead railway station, which listed St Hill Manor, home of L. Ron Hubbard, among its town's historic sites, was removed by the railway company, saying it was because it was an unsafe location. Again, that's a lie, because it was removed because they were unsure about the controversy it would cause and the unsafe impact it will have on survivors of trauma within Scientology. It goes on and on. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but The Guardian, again, one of the most major, most read newspapers in the UK, and it's very clear here. They are reporting not on Scientology's event, not on the protesters, but on the disruption that this event causes to the local area. And finally, again, I won't read through it because it's very similar to the other articles. She Knows is another newspaper or online article here about the charity concert and the disruption that it caused to the local community. And the beauty of this thing over the weekend is the people of East Grinstead are angry that this event causes disruption. And perhaps what was most alarming to me was Scientology's response in their statement to this article in, I think it was The Guardian, or it may have been the Daily Mail or She Knows. In one of them, let me try and find it here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we were talking about the planning laws being ignored and the Highways Agency putting in a temporary traffic order because of their obstructions. It's very clear, it's a non-disputable fact that Scientology placed obstructions on the highway, and the Highways Agency stepped in to try and minimize disruption, and there was no planning permission for the tent. Now, in this She Knows article, it says here, a spokesperson for the church pushed back on claims of disorder, saying the event featured traditional performances, community festivities, and a charity gala benefiting local causes. And that all planning rules for the reported 45,000 square foot marquee were followed. This is nothing but an outright lie. How on earth this organisation can claim that this event took place in a legal structure is beyond me, because they don't have planning permission. The local council are currently considering planning enforcement action. The Highways Agency told them that they were in breach of their hoarding and their planting licence. It is not up for debate that they were in breach of planning rules. But it didn't stop Scientology issuing a statement saying that they were not at fault. And that's why I wanted to bring these three articles to you today. This weekend has been a weekend from hell for the Office of Special Affairs, because the press is finally cottoning on to the fact that it's not about me as an ex-member having a discrepancy with Scientology about my treatment. It is about the local community of people who, many of whom have never been in Scientology, being disturbed, being disrupted, being outraged at the fact that this organization is allowed to continue hosting large events to which thousands of people attend without the due diligence that every other event in the town has to go through. Planning permission, highways, traffic management plans, childcare plans, vulnerable children, and so on. It is outrageous to me that Scientology can simply claim we followed the rules when they have an email from the authorities saying you're not following the rules. And it just goes to show how willing Scientology are to lie outright to the press in order to save face. Let's have a look at some of these comments. Haggis Basher. The town has to stop giving them so much leniency when they break every law and just throw money at it. I saved this from earlier because I wanted to bring this up again because it's relevant. East Grinstead, as a town, very clearly are unhappy with Scientology's annual event. The national, in fact, the international media are now reporting on the fact that this is a disruptive, unlawful event that takes place that people don't approve of. So the town aren't giving them leniency. The town want answers. And the ball is now firmly in Mid Sussex District Council's court, and we await them to make a decision on what enforcement action they may or may not take. The town is not giving Scientology leniency. The council is. And my question is, when will the council start listening to the members of the community who elected them to take action on issues like this? The big problem for me is when over the weekend we noticed Councillor Dick Sweatman, who is the vice chair of the planning committee, show up to this event taking place in an illegal structure that doesn't have planning permission. How on earth he can justify attending an event in an illegal structure when he is vice chair of the planning committee is beyond me. And I hope to Xenu that he will recuse himself from any say or involvement in the current planning application that is under review. Block Buddy saying, didn't deny abuses, just stated overblown, safe pointing, cash spent. Yeah. We don't deny we abused people, but we gave £2 million to charity. Okay, great. Please do continue giving millions of pounds to local charities. But you're abusing people, and stop abusing people. They don't ever comment on that, do they? They never deny it. A voice down under T is here saying, member for 7 months. Thank you so much for being a member of the channel for 7 months, T. I really appreciate that. And it was so lovely to see you at the IES protest last weekend. Was that tent the same size as last year? Indeed, it was the same size as last year and the year before. Now, we don't have the plans for what happened inside the tent, but it looks like it was laid out in such a way that in photographs it looks big and full and the same size as previously. But actually, from my inside knowledge, from sources that have been talking to me and a few photos that have emerged from inside the tent that aren't Scientology official photos, it really signifies to me that they changed the layout slightly so the capacity wasn't as large as last year, but it will still look big and filled up in the pictures. Cindy here saying, what do you have to do with what someone else writes? The writer is batshit crazy, not you. Well, yeah, and this is why I love to just throw it back on them. Lara here saying, yes, I'm back. So glad I'm catching up. Thank you so much, Lara, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I really appreciate it. Bill here saying, Apostate Alex has a lot of support around the growing larger community. Yes, and this is why I wanted to bring these articles to your attention, is not to say, look at me and the wonderful things I've been doing. Isn't it great that I've got this press attention? Isn't it wonderful that this protest has been covered by the media? No, it's not about me. In fact, the majority of these articles don't have a picture of me. One of them does. A couple of them have quotes, but the majority of them are not focused on protesters gathering outside. The topic of the article is the disruption Scientology's event caused to the local community, and quoted local residents complaining about that disruption. And I think this firmly places the ball in the council's court to do something about it. That's what's important here, is trying to campaign and trying to raise awareness among elected officials about what is really going on at the Church of Scientology and really compel them to act to stop the disruption. I have no problem with Scientology holding a large fundraising event. Go ahead, be my guest. But you should hold such an event at a purpose-built facility that is built and designed for the influx of attendees that come from all over the world. The infrastructure in terms of widening the road, the highway, maybe implementing some pavements on the side of the road, maybe a pedestrian crossing. These things need to be thought about that make it ultimately safer for everybody. If you want to carry on holding this event in East Grinstead, you should do so in a way that minimizes disruption. And it's a little bit rich for Scientology to say that a group of 21 protesters that showed up on Friday, standing on the verge with a couple of signs saying things like pay the staff minimum wage, were the ones causing the disruption. The hypocrisy never ends. And I will continue fighting this cause, raising awareness and doing what I can to shine a light on Scientology's abusive practices. I've tried to have a week off. That week off didn't really go very well because every single day I've been responding to journalists and working behind the scenes. And I want you guys to understand that even when I'm not going live every day, I'm still working backstage to try and get things done and trying to raise awareness. And I really appreciate everybody's support. Of course, Scientology aren't, backing down in their harassment. And just to give you one final example of the hypocrisy and the ability to outright lie about certain things, Scientology's Stand League website, which is one of their attack wing sites, issued this statement on their website about me being alone in the rain. They shared a picture that I put on Instagram of me standing with a walkie-talkie laughing. And basically, this article claims that I was alone in protesting and I was the only person there. And it's sad that I was on my own protesting and nobody supports me. Which is, again, an outright lie. Because if you look at my Instagram page, the next photo that I posted after this one, there's the picture there. The next one is a picture of me with the protesters. And there were at least 21 people who showed up on the Friday. It was a big group of us. It is no secret. The whole thing was live streamed. There is nothing to suggest I was protesting on my own. And it just goes to show how far Scientology will take it to try and smear my name, try and make it look like I'm all on my own with no support. And Scientologists read it and they believe it. And it just makes me want to fight harder. And I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to make it so very clear that I couldn't do this on my own. I couldn't do this without the support of people who have walked this path before, people like Mike Rinder, Stephen Jones, Martin Padfield, Bonnie Woods, John Atack, Mark and Claire Headley, Amy Scobie. There are so many people who have faced Scientology for years and stood up to their bully tactics. And without their work, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. Similarly, even if I was on my own, I would still show up and stand there with my sign. But the fact that 21 people showed up alongside me to stand there on Friday last weekend just goes to show it's not just me. There is a group of people who are A, concerned about the abusive practices of the Church of Scientology, and B, want to support those who wish to leave. It's your choice if you want to leave the Church of Scientology, but when you do, please understand, we're not going to try and convince you, we're not going to try and change your mind. We just want to help you set up a life independent of the church, and we are there to help. And we will continue showing up until we are sure that the abuse has stopped. Now, before I close off, I want to read you a short statement that I put out on my Instagram just earlier, which was about some harassment that I received earlier today. As a prominent figure in the ex-Scientology space, fair game is just one of those things we have to learn to live with. Fair game is Scientology's practice of employing intimidation and bully tactics in a desperate attempt to stifle free speech and silence its critics. It often involves hiring private investigators to engage in what they describe as a noisy investigation. The message? We're watching you. And the campaign is designed to intimidate and harass former members and to a point of submission. These operations are orchestrated by the Office of Special Affairs, a department of the Church formerly known as the Guardian's Office, which was once found guilty of the largest infiltration of the US government in its history, Google Operation Snow White. The tactics they use are real and funded by multi-million-dollar donations made to the International Association of Scientologists by members like Tom Cruise, under the instruction of reclusive leader David Miscavige. Their goal is to silence dissent and protect, at all costs, whatever's left of their reputation. Over the last year, I have been the recipient of over 10,000 attack tweets, complaints to my employer, and emails to my family and friends in a desperate attempt to tarnish my name and damage my livelihood. All because I chose to speak out about the abuse I and so many others suffered while under the spell of the so-called church. It's hard to describe the sense of a weight being lifted off my shoulders, the freedom and autonomy regained when I managed to shake off the PIs for a brief moment. For many, being fair gamed is a distant concept, something people know about but have never experienced. And for some, the suggestion you are being followed or watched can serve as an indicator of paranoia. But the truth of the matter is this: If you become a problem for the Church of Scientology, they will invest vast quantities of money and resource into tracking your every move and making sure you know you are being watched. And for me, having PIs in tow is just a fact of life. It's a covert intelligence and operation designed to intimidate and scare critics into silence. Since becoming a vocal figure here in the UK, I've noticed the intensity of Scientology's investigative operations fluctuate in response to my activities, and I generally try not to let it impact my day-to-day life. I have nothing to hide, and all they will gain by continuing to harass me is further scrutiny and bad press. But, on occasion, it becomes clear I am not being followed. And when that happens, I find myself regaining a sense of autonomy, of self-confidence, and of independence. It's only a matter of time before the PIs catch up with my movements and carry on with their constant surveillance. But even if it's for the brief 30-minute commute home, noticing there isn't somebody in my shadow and tracking my every move offers an indescribable sense of comfort and respite. Knowing that for the next half an hour, I can catch a breath and relax before the madness starts again. My message is simple. I have nothing against those who choose to be Scientologists, but I'm the sort of person who stands up to bullies, and I'm not afraid. I have nothing to hide, but I will not give up. When I left Scientology, I decided I could once again start thinking for myself, and that's something I refuse to sacrifice. Before I go here, let me read you this last live chat comment here. Thank you so much, Mrs. T, for the super chat, saying, I suggest we stop calling it a church, but instead an organisation similar to the JWs. Well, in the UK, their buildings are considered places of public worship, so I will continue describing them as a church until legislation changes, so they are not considered legally a church anymore, because they are officially a church. And if that annoys you, if that is something you disagree with, what I suggest you do is write to your state representative, write to your member of parliament, write to your local town councillor. It takes 5 minutes to craft an email that simply says, this place is considered a church, they engage in harassment, they engage in abuse, and I'm not okay with it. What are you going to do about that? That's what I suggest you do. I will stop calling it a church when the law stops recognizing it as a church. And if it annoys you I'm calling it a church, maybe you should do something about that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was I expected this to be like a 10-20 minute live stream. We've ended up going on for an hour. This is my little recap after a week off, and I will be coming back. A voice down under here with another super chat. Thank you so much. Alex, will you join the worldwide vigil for Lisa McPherson on the 5th of December? Yeah, if I'm not working. Let me check my schedule here. 5th of December. I'm working on the 5th of December. What am I working? Okay, I'm not going to announce my shift times, but I will be working on the 5th of December. But either before or after work, absolutely, I can do something. Send me the information to you. You have my number, and I'll see if I can get involved in some way, shape, or form. If you guys want to support the activism that I've been doing, this protest movement from a UK perspective, and things that I've been engaging in, please do consider using the Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal links down below. That really supports me with what I've been doing. For example, by paying for the streaming software so that you guys can watch me talk live stream here and get involved in the comments. I really do appreciate all the financial support that you can give. But the number one, most effective and most important way of you supporting this movement, in my opinion, is by engaging in the comments once the live stream finishes down below. Leave a comment that pushes the video out to more people. Write to your member of parliament, write to your town councillor, and just say, what are you going to do about it? These are people who have been elected to represent you, so you need to let them know what your views are. So please engage, please share, please comment. If you want to help financially, PayPal, buy me a coffee. It's very appreciated. But the best thing you can do is share this far and wide. And guys, I will be back tomorrow with more. But that's it from me for now. Thank you and good night.